I'm William Shatner. I've done a lot of things in my career, but this takes the cake. This is so cool. You, Joseph, today, it's all about you. You won the internet. Congratulations. It's exciting. It makes me want to celebrate. Makes me want to get up out of this chair. Makes me want to sing. Makes me want to dance. Makes me want to shout. Kick my heels up. Throw my hands up. Toss my head back. No, really, people should be shouting your name in the street.
Come on now. Sing
that song.
Joseph, sing.
Sing it out loud.
Joseph.
I want to celebrate. Put it up in lights.
The internet belongs to you.
See, no one else deserves to be celebrated like you because you are the best.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is CeeLo Green, and you are now tuned in to Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, he is not famous at all. Check out this new streaming show. It is perfect. And if you don't, fuck you.
We are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently, right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's the after party, so it's now we go with the flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this too. It's a real service to the community.
What a great organization and a show that offers hope, optimism, creative solutions, entertainment.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph. It's your gift to the universe and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
I am insane because I've been doing the show for 4 years and, I should have quit a long time ago, but I'm stubborn. Actually, I did a personality test today, and turns out I don't have one, which might be my weakness. But what if the weakness was the strength? These are the words to live by. These are the words from maybe one of my favorite guests ever, out of about 750, Mr. David Rendall, when he is not running 500 marathons consecutively. He's a crazy man. He wears pink, and he's not afraid to show it. And he's done some just incredible work. In fact, when I turned 50, so the show was called Corona TV, 2020, I turned 50, and I said to my wife and my kids, what I want for my birthday, the one thing I want is I want them to sit down and watch this episode. It's the only time I've ever asked them to watch one episode of my show, and it was to watch this one. The story that Dave told me, I have maybe said it to hundreds, if not thousands of people. These are words to live by, and he's going to be on the show. He is perfectly imperfect, or maybe imperfectly perfect, but he has the right balance. And so he'll be on the show shortly, but everything is pink just naturally today. I've started my show off every single time this year by saying, with my why statement, which is, as a teacher, facilitator, and coach, I help high aspiring entrepreneurs, owners, and their leadership teams get unstuck, return to growth, and become forever changed. Well, what does it mean? Well, I'll tell you what it means. When it comes to getting unstuck, when I started the show, it was because people were stuck at home or just stuck in general. And I guess when you're stuck, the best thing to do is to get unstuck. What does it mean to return to growth? Well, I started coaching, business and leadership coaching with EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. And I've always been fascinated with growth because the whole thing is sometimes growth means growing up. Sometimes growth is about perspective. It's not always about growth in terms of market share and top line and bottom line and EBITDA and all those fancy financial words. Sometimes growth can be a certain maturation. Sometimes growth can be perspective. And then finally, when it comes to forever changed, this is my 6th and probably final book, How a Global Pandemic Changed My Direction, My Purpose, and My Life. The funny thing about this book is I'm not even talking about it. I'm not promoting it. It's just so personal and so deeply, deeply personal. You can buy it if you want. You can read it. But it really does talk about this whole experience, including but not limited to the show. So it's a little bit meta if you think about it. Forever Changed. And I got to get Mr. Rendall a copy of that. But now it's time for the seated soliloquy. I don't even know if I was doing the seated soliloquy when David was on the show. One of the things that's so interesting about the seated soliloquy is I started off and I used a teleprompter just because it felt kind of cool. It felt cool to be able to use a teleprompter and really choose my words carefully, every word, making sure it was a certain word count. And I actually loved it. I loved the discipline of it. And then one day something happened. I can't remember what it was, whether the prompter was on the fritz or I ran out of time and I just had to wing it. And I realized that's always been me. That's always been how I've operated. I've never had show notes. I don't have show notes. Here are the show notes if you want to see them. I mean, it just says Dave Rendall. That's all it says. I've never read from a teleprompter when I've keynoted in 51 countries. I've never had a script at all. My life has never really been scripted. And so I just went back to just winging it and talking off the cuff. And so today's soliloquy, seated, is called I'm Perfectionist. Now, what actually happened with this particular soliloquy is that I was writing the word imperfectionist, which is the name of Dave's podcast, and it auto-corrected to I'm Perfectionist. And I suddenly thought, wait a second, maybe that wasn't a coincidence. Maybe that was meant to happen. This idea of trying to be perfect, the fool's errand, Don Quixote chasing those windmills, being able to just try and live a life of perfection, be perfect in every way. But boy, oh boy, do you just lose everything in the process by trying to be perfect. Perfect for whom? For yourself? For others? Are you living your life for others? Or are you just trying to be the best version of yourself? Look, there are companies out there that sell flawed and imperfect fruit and vegetables. The name escapes me right now, but there's something so beautiful. A Dove's Campaign for Real Woman, the examples of actually celebrating being perfectly imperfect are so numerous. And actually, got to be honest, if you're in the perfect or perfectionist camp right now, you're out of vogue. You're not cool anymore. You're not cool if you're trying to be a super mom, super dad, super model, super anything. In fact, the only thing super is your ability to be honest, open, vulnerable, and maybe just a little bit better tomorrow than you were yesterday. And as for today, just celebrate and revel in those warts, those imperfectionisms. It's probably why even today, there's no hair and makeup. There was once upon a time. I'm not kidding. You can't make this thing look pretty. But I hope if you're watching, I hope if you're struggling, you'll pick up a little bit of inspiration from this. But I know that you will just be completely inspired by Dave, my guest, who, the only mistake I've made in my life is waiting 4 years for him to come back. But without further ado, let's bring him on. But before I do that, just a little bit about him. David Rendall has spoken to audiences on every inhabited continent. That has to mean Antarctica. Wait, do people live there? I don't know. His clients include the US Air Force, Australian government, and Fortune 50 companies such as Microsoft, AT&T, United Health Group, Fannie Mae, and State Farm. Before becoming a speaker, he was a leadership professor and stand-up comedian. He also managed nonprofits that provided employment for people with disabilities. In between presentations, David competes in ultra marathons and Ironman triathlons. I see him, come. He's like the proverbial, postal person who works for the USPS. Come rain, come shine, come sleet, come snow. This man is on the road. David has a Doctor of Management degree in organizational leadership, as well as a graduate degree in psychology, and is the author of 4 books: The 4 Factors of Effective Leadership, The Freak Factor for Kids, and Pink Goldfish 2.0. Let's bring him back to the show. Mr. Dave Rendall, welcome back, my friend.
Thanks for having me back. It's been a long time.
It has been 4 years, and this show has just become even more imperfect. And I've gotten a little bit better. I've gotten maybe a lot better, but still, I revel in the flaws. Whereas before, it used to just destroy me when anything went wrong, when I lost connection. I would actually almost sink into this heaviness, this depression afterwards. And now it is what it is.
I was listening to your soliloquy, and we actually talk about those companies in Pink Goldfish 2.0. So it's Imperfect Foods, and one of their competitors is Misfit Market, but they all sell the produce that's too big, too oddly shaped, slightly bruised, just somehow not perfect enough for stores to sell it, but nothing wrong with it from a nutritional or taste standpoint, just not good for mass produced whatever. So Imperfect Foods and Misfit Market.
And then, of course, there was the other famous example of Little Mismatched, the
socks. Yeah, a Little Mismatch. Yep.
But I wonder how many those brands or those examples are they're older. I'm wondering now suddenly, like, what are the latest examples of brands that have taken that route, or moreover, and I don't know if you'll know the answer, because I certainly don't, but what are some of the bigger brands that have taken that route? I mean, Dove's campaign for Real Woman, I think, is it's the same but different.
Yeah, I think that was a great example. We used them as well. I think you're seeing more and more personal examples. So personal branding, like Ashley Graham was the first plus-sized model for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. And she's, developed a huge career around body positivity and things like that. One of my favorite unusual brands and sort of imperfect brands right now is Liquid Death Mountain Water, and they've definitely exploded. There's literally a water called Life Water, and they called theirs Liquid Death. And they just sell all sorts of stuff that looks heavy metal. And I listened to the story. The founder just wanted to stop working at an agency, working for companies that weren't bold enough to implement his ideas. And so he looked for a product that he could sell where he could try out all his crazy ideas. One of my favorites recently was they put together side by side 2 Yeti coolers inside of a coffin, and they auctioned it online, eventually getting about $70,000 for a coffin cooler that actually functions to keep your liquid death cool. But that's one example of imperfection, where they do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Their water comes in cans. Their slogan is "Death to Plastic," and they do outrageous, ridiculous, seemingly silly things, and it's precisely why anybody's heard of Liquid Death Mountain Water. And they sort of go against the normal standards of professionalism and that's probably the word, professionalism and rational decision making. And they've been hugely successful because of it. That's one of my favorite ones lately.
You actually said something that really connected with me, which is that perfect actually equals the norm and imperfect equals the exception. And it does, but it doesn't, in a way, because there's nothing. The pursuit of perfection perhaps might be a norm, but I like that. I like the way of weaving in the concept of being a challenger, and actually almost drawing on difference being the exception, being exceptional, but the imperfections of Avis, right? We try harder, as opposed to we're number one.
Well, that's what we talk about in Pink Goldfish, and the same thing's true for people as individuals. The reason that it matters that weaknesses might be strengths, or that things that look like mistakes might actually be successes, is because the the standard that they judge you by in an industry is set by the leaders. And so if you are going to innovate, it's going to look like a mistake. It's going to look like a miscalculation. It's going to look bad, wrong, incorrect, ineffective, because all of those things are measured towards the existing standard. And that's why so many companies and individuals don't end up actually innovating, because it looks wrong. It looks like a mistake. It looks like a weakness. And so that's why I talk about all the things that I talk about, is because then we show these examples of companies that succeed using these different approaches, and then the game changes. So, I mean, a great one, I mean, you talked about, something newer. I mean, it's not as new anymore, but it's still incredibly successful, is Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat, when it was developed, the founder was in an MBA class, and he presented Snapchat as an idea, and he's like, "Hey, I got this idea for this, photo app, but the pictures disappear." And everybody in the class loved it except for the part where the pictures disappear. And there was a venture capitalist in the room who said, "If you lose the idea about pictures disappearing and you do a partnership with Best Buy, I'll invest with you." And they didn't do that deal. And obviously Snapchat went on to not only be successful, but this goes to what we were just talking about. Now LinkedIn has stories, Instagram has stories, Facebook has stories. Everybody has stories. And what are stories? You post it, and after a certain period of time, it disappears. Nobody was having things disappear, and it seemed insane. In fact, there's a famous quote that the internet is forever. Facebook at the time was telling you that you could have a legacy account where if you passed away, somebody else could manage it for you. So you'd never lose anything that you'd ever put on the internet. And Snapchat's like, it'll be gone in a few seconds. So at the time, it looked like a mistake. It looked like a weakness of the app. It looked like it was silly or ridiculous or a problem or something certainly no one would want, because no one was doing it. And now it's literally changed pretty much everything about the way we think about social media. And then even that's expanded. So there's another company called Delete Me. And, we used to be big on SEO and find me on the internet and find my information and put your information out there and make it possible for people to locate you. And now Delete Me goes around on the internet and tries to eliminate your personal information on the internet, because people realize that there's a lot of privacy that's been lost over the years in us putting everything out there. So you're seeing this redirection. Snapchat was just the tip of the iceberg. But again, when it first came out, even the idea of Delete Me, I mean, what's search engine optimization? It's come up with words that'll help people find you and find information about you and locate you and be able to learn anything about you. And then there's a site that says, hey, what if we tried to completely remove you from the internet? So that's the barrier to innovation. When you start it, it looks wrong. It looks like a mistake. It looks like a weakness. It looks like an imperfection. And only the people that can push past that point end up actually doing anything innovative. Everybody else just says, let me do it better than the leader. And better than the leader, what at the time was, making the pictures last forever. Certainly not making them disappear.
And the funny thing is, I mean, I'll just touch on 2 points, and then I mean, we could just talk about this for an hour. Why don't you just come back every week? But one of the things that's interesting is if you look at a teenager and the use of Instagram, you go in and you see like, well, where are the photos? There are no photos. They delete them all. They're like, I don't get it. I'm like, but this is your album. This is your legacy. This is your life. This is your story.
But it isn't, right. They don't, well, they only put them on stories. So that's what I learned. They put them on stories and then they disappear. So when you go to their actual page, there might be a few. And even then, my daughter will say, well, I have a bunch of pictures I want to share from this trip, but I don't want to spam everybody. I'm like, what do you mean spam everybody? You just put them up there. Nobody has to look at them. Oh, no, you don't want to do that to people. And so then they create secondary accounts called spam accounts, where it's sort of your closer friends or people you have relationships with can go do it. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Snapchat's that concept. We went from get everything out there, put everything out there all the time. And again, have that photo of a croissant from, 2014 last forever to, does it even need to be out there? And if it does need to be out there, does it need to be out there for very long? And as you see, most people, it isn't staying out there for very long.
Okay, so my last point that I wanted to make on this is then there are intentional mistakes. And something I've been learning about recently, which is often there are people that make mistakes intentionally, and it is, well, at least you might not think it's intentional, but it's very intentional. For example, and we won't go down too far the path, but from a political standpoint, there are certain Twitter accounts with spelling mistakes, and the question is, were those done on purpose or were they intentional? In fact, gaming acquisition advertising works that way too, where you look at a spelling mistake and you're like, what the hell? Like how unprofessional, how amateurish. But then there's probably a little kind of what do you call it? Unconscious or subconscious trigger saying this game's probably pretty easy to play if they can't even spell, how to make a lot of money online easily. So there's that too. There's the intentional mistake.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole philosophy about imperfections called wabi-sabi. So in Pink Goldfish, we talk about kintsugi, which is this idea of broken pottery being repaired in a way that the cracks, the damage are visible. So you highlight it with lacquer and gold. And so I shared that at the beginning of my Pink Goldfish presentations. And the very first time I presented it, I happened to be presenting to a group of entrepreneurs. And this guy came up to me afterwards and he said, "Do you know about wabi-sabi?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, kintsugi is illuminating existing imperfection, right? It's been damaged, it's been broken. We repair it in a way that it's clear that it's been damaged. It's not trying to hide the scars, it's illuminating the scars." He said, "Have you heard of wabi-sabi?" And I said, "No, what's wabi-sabi?" He said, "Wabi-sabi is this idea that nature is beautiful and nature is imperfect. And so therefore, we don't need to try to make perfect things. We can make beautiful things that are intentionally imperfect. So we make them with the mistake on perfect." So for example, you might craft this vase just absolutely perfectly, but right before you fire it, you take a knife and you put a little scar on it before, or instead of cutting out the piece of wood to get rid of the knot or get rid of some kind of imperfection, you deliberately pick the one with the damage or the knot or the imperfection. And you can do architecture this way, you can do gardening this way. It's a whole sort of theory about what is it that we're even trying to accomplish. I just read one yesterday. There's this great book that I love. There's two of them now. One's called Subpar Parks. It's by Amber Sher. And the first one was, she realized that every U.S. national park had at least one-star review. So she picked the best one-star review, the funniest or the most interesting. And then she does this beautiful art, almost like a postcard. And then she puts the one-star review on there. And then she started with just that in an Instagram account. And then she created this beautiful book where it talks a little bit about the parks. And then she just released a new one called Subpar Planet. So one of my favorites, Stan and I, my co-author, when we talk to different groups, we try to pick one towards them. So we spoke to this group in Hawaii. And so we told them about the one from Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. The one-star review was, "Didn't even get to touch the lava." And the idea is, if a national park, one of the 63 best places in America, which has a lot of best places, and people come from all over the world to see the beautiful natural beauty that America has, if one of the most beautiful places in the world gets a one-star review from someone, and by the way, there's not much you can do to improve Volcanoes National Park. It's a natural place. The Grand Canyon, you don't go sweep up at the Grand Canyon. It's a huge place that goes over hundreds and thousands of acres. If these places can't make people happy, then what hope do you have of achieving a level of perfection that's greater than one of these incredibly amazing places? And so I was just reading her new one called Subpar Planet. And she's talking about the Taj Mahal. And she said that there's 4 minarets that go around the outside of the Taj Mahal, kind of an outer layer. And she said, if you notice, they lean outwards, and this isn't a mistake like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So the Leaning Tower of Pisa, I love that example, because they now preserve the tilt, because they recognize that's what makes it special. They're not trying to straighten it up. They have the technology. They could straighten it up. They don't want to. They've preserved it at exactly the tilt that it was, like 3.97% or something. But these minarets face out on purpose. They're intentionally angled out. They're intentionally imperfect and not straight, because that area is subject to earthquakes. And if there's earthquakes, they want the towers to fall out instead of falling in on the structure. And so that's another really interesting example of, and I just made that note last night, intentional imperfection. We could have made it straight. We didn't on purpose, because we're trying to do something different. And again, the Taj Mahal is one of the, new 7 wonders of the world. And again, somebody had a 1-star review for it. And so, I think that's a great lesson, that the pursuit of perfection, even if you achieve something really amazing, there are people who just aren't happy with it and won't be happy with it. And so trying to win everyone over isn't going to get you where you want to go. And so at some point you have to decide to be you, to be unique, to do what you want to do, and to find the people who like what you're up to, and ignore the people who think that there's something wrong with you.
So I was smiling. I haven't stopped smiling. I haven't stopped smiling because I was thinking back to there's so many examples that you and I and Stan, all of us are so familiar with. But the one that just jumped out at me was the 3 Wolf Moon T-shirt. And you're familiar with that, right?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, you're gonna love this one. So it was I'm gonna have to like walk and chew gum at the same time, which is to figure out how I can hold on. I'll try and find it, because my 5 producers that are normally working on the show, I gave them the night off.
All 5.
All 5 at the same time, because I'm an idiot, because I'm a kind person. Anyway, it was this butt ugly shirt with 3 wolves howling at the moon.
Yeah.
And somehow it just started to get a slew. You're going to definitely put this one into your presentation, of 1-star reviews on Amazon. And it was like, because the whole thing was like, this shirt's not real. I was promised that, because even then in the description, it will say, will make the wearer, kind of, attractive to whichever sex they prefer. And they were like, this is BS. I wore the shirt and I was not instantly attracted, the opposite sex. And the other one is bizarre things happened, started sprouting hair, and started drinking milk everywhere. And it was the #1 seller on Amazon. And we've seen so many examples of what happens when the community, when the zeitgeist, the culture just gets behind a product and just starts piling on those 1-star reviews. But Dave, here's the so I'm going to give you, that's exhibit B, that's exhibit A. Exhibit B, when I wrote Flip the Funnel, I said to people, I don't want a gratuitous 5-star review. I would rather you give me an honest 1-star review, or a 2-star review, and give me your honest opinion, than just placate or give me a 5-star review. And then when I got like maybe a 2-star or 1-star review, it stung like hell. And suddenly I realized, you know what? They might be being honest for whatever reason, but the rest of the world, we're not conditioned to understand. We're conditioned to see a 1-star review and interpret that as being bad. How do you get beyond that the fact that we should be looking more at subpar books and subpar parks and subpar planets?
Well, we do, because everybody has a different guideline, right? Somebody says, oh, I remember teaching a class once and somebody was yelling about Target because they rip you off because the prices aren't as low at Walmart. Well, that's not why people go to Target. People go to Target to have a better experience than they have at Walmart. People go to Walmart to save money and because they don't value their psychological and emotional well-being, right? So part of it is understanding who you're for, and who's paying attention, and recognizing there's no way to eliminate those 1-star reviews. So even if somebody says, well, I really want to have those 5-star reviews and it stings when I get the 1-star reviews, there really is no way to avoid it. And that's part of, I mean, I call it acceptance. We call it acceptance in Pink Goldfish. We call it acceptance in Freak Factor. Part of it is just acknowledging the reality that everyone isn't going to love it. Everyone isn't going to be excited about it. And not only are they not going to be excited about it, some people are going to actually, be actively against it. And that's actually what's going to make it attractive to some other people. There's a great story in the book of a authentic Italian pizza place in Northern California called Botto Bistro. And the guy who started it, David Saratini, I think I don't know, you might say it differently, Davide or something like that. Saratini, it's David with an E at the end. He thought Yelp was trying to rip him off with negative reviews on Yelp and trying to con him into buying their services. He thought they were suppressing his good reviews and boosting the bad reviews. So he told people he'd give them 50% off a pizza if they gave him a 1-star review. And he sold more pizzas in a day than he usually sold in a month. And then people didn't know what to do if they didn't like his pizza because they realized he wanted a 1-star review. So if you go to Yelp for Botto Bistro, people will post a 5-star review, but it'll be incredibly negative, but with 5 stars. And then there will be 1-star reviews that are incredibly positive. And so he basically undermined the whole system of,
that's hilarious,
of ratings. Snowbird did a good one too. So I think part of it is to go on the offensive. So Snowbird is a ski mountain in Utah, a ski resort in Utah, and they put out full page ads in magazines and then full billboards and these full color advertisements with 1-star reviews, like no easy runs. And then they didn't say anything. They didn't say, but obviously we're awesome or you'll like it. They just put this amazing photo. And then the person's full 1-star review with a headline, 1 star, and then all the things they wrote after. We felt like we were taking our life into our hands. Why do a lot of people ski? For the adrenaline rush. Why do a lot of people ski? Because it's dangerous. So they just said the thing that this person doesn't like about us is probably what our ideal customer does like about us. And so without comment, we're going to share these 1-star reviews with people. And they came up with a whole series of it. And so I think that's part, the Botto Bistro example, the Snowbird example is to go on the offensive. I post mine online. I forget the name of the company, but there was an IT services company when I was talking to that same group of entrepreneurs, and they just put all of their customer feedback. It just scrolls down the side of their website 24/7, positive, negative, critical, appreciative. It just scrolls through because the transparency, and that's one of the key points in Pink Goldfish is exposing, is people find authenticity and vulnerability attractive. And so part of the way to fight back is, instead of trying to suppress and hide those 1-star reviews, it's just to put it out there and let people know that you're not perfect and you're not pretending to be. And just that is in and of itself is going to be attractive and is going to bring people in that wouldn't have come otherwise.
Well, here's the quote that I found for you, which I didn't know when I was going to bring it on or in, and it just felt like the right quote. I'm pretty sure you know the quote well.
Winston Churchill.
Yeah. Yes, Bessie, I think her name was. I am drunk, but you are ugly. Tomorrow I will be sober, and you will still be particularly ugly. What is that quote in context? Because to me, this is about personality. This is about imperfectionism. This is about sometimes attacking as opposed to cowering. We see this today, the inability to be able to, just again, treat the criticism like a 1-star review. How do you kind of put this together with this whole new direction that you're taking with imperfectionism and the evolution of personality?
Yeah. Well, it's not so much a new direction as I think a deepening of the direction. I mean, Freak Factor and Pink Goldfish both emphasize the importance of flaunting, which is what you just said. It's to parade without shame, to be unapologetic, to not try to hide those aspects of who we are because it might displease somebody. It's knowing that it will displease somebody and that it will be very attractive to other people. And so I'm just trying to, I think the reason that I focus on things like acceptance is because if you don't have to accept it, and if you can change it or fix it, then it seems like it makes sense to do it. And so part of what I'm trying to communicate to people is that a lot of this stuff is, just for example, the way you are. Just like I'm 6'6" and I didn't earn that. I didn't choose that. I can't change that. And your personality, I think, is a lot the same way. I mean, people will say things like, oh, I grew up in a big family and, 6, 7 brothers and sisters, and they always had people over, and there were cousins over and boyfriends and girlfriends and friends over and family friends over. And so I learned to love being around people. And so now I'm a big extrovert. Well, that's a mistake. And so what that means is if Joseph, if you are an introvert and you wish you could get out there more and be more excited about being around a lot of people, you could learn, because that's how this person did it. They learned through experience to be an extrovert, and that's a mistake. And the way to prove it's a mistake is because that person always has at least one of those 7 or 8 brothers or sisters who's a massive introvert, who doesn't like people. Their life story is, I grew up in a big family. There was always people around, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, cousins, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends. And I learned that I hated it. And as soon as I was an adult, I was never going to be around another person if I could avoid it for the rest of my life. Neither person became an introvert or extrovert at their house growing up. They discovered that they were an introvert or an extrovert at their house. And then once they had control over their life, they chose circumstances that fit who they were. And there's nothing good about being an introvert or nothing bad about being an introvert. There's nothing good or bad about being an extrovert. So part of it is, but people will call you imperfect when you don't want to go to that party, when you don't want to go to the cocktail reception, when you find yourself drained by too much social interaction, and they'll tell you to get out there and network and push yourself and stretch and all these things, because as though there's something wrong, and you oftentimes might feel like there's something wrong with being that kind of person. But again, that all assumes you could change it if you wanted to, and there's something wrong with it. And so what I'm trying to do with the work that I'm doing now is establish some of the things even below, flaunting, and that weaknesses are also strengths, and be like, where does this come from? How do we become the kind of people we are? How solid is it? What are the things that we can change? And what are the things that we should change? And I think if we misunderstand how this stuff happens, then we misunderstand how to do things about it. And so again, one of the reasons I focus so much on acceptance, for example, and appreciation is because we believe things like, oh yeah, we can just change your personality. Well, first of all, if that's true, it assumes 2 things. Number one, that you created it to begin with through some kind of conscious or subconscious process, which I don't think is true. And I just tried to illustrate that with the introvert extrovert. I could do that all day. The other one is that you should change your personality, that there could be something wrong with your personality, and you should want to change it and make it better. And there's nothing good or bad about anybody's personality. That's not how personality works. It's great to like to be alone. It's great to be thoughtful and reflective. It's great to love to be with people and be really communicative and interactive. Those are both good things. And if you're not the other thing, that's fine as well. We have this love of the person who can do everything and be everything and enjoys everything and pushes themselves to constantly expand. And again, I think that's one of the other big myths that comes with this, is these things like, I hate that drawing that goes around on the internet. It's like a meme, that has this circle out here and it says your comfort zone. And then this circle way over here that says where the magic happens. And there's a huge space between the two. And what it argues is that whatever you are and whatever you enjoy and whatever is the foundation of sort of what makes you tick, because that's part of what comfort is. Some people are comfortable in environments that other people aren't comfortable in. You have to leave all of that behind and go to this other place. And that's where the magic happens. And I think that's absolute bullshit. And that's the problem that we have in our world is people are constantly tearing themselves down. They're constantly tearing other people down because there's this idea that if you like it, it makes you happy. It comes naturally. It fills you up. It energizes you. Throw that away and go find something that hurts and that you have to struggle with and that you have to fight with. And I just think that's absolute nonsense. And again, it's built on a foundation of misunderstandings about the way human beings even work and the way our psychology even develops. I'm getting riled up here, Joseph.
Please make sure that you buy Dave Rendall's next book, which is sure to be a bestseller, Where the Magic Happens. I'm telling you. I have a little twist on that, right?
Yeah.
Where the magic happens.
like
It may
that.
not be where you expect.
I like
that. Like talk about getting riled up. I think about change, right? You talk about personality change. My wife and I will mainly me, which is with all my flaws, I kind of flip between these two extremes, these two polar extremes. One is this idea of this is who I am, accept me for who I am.
Mhm.
This is me. And the other one about this idea of committing to change, always being in motion, always evolving, always striving to be a better version of myself.
Yeah.
Is there a middle ground? How do you reconcile this idea of embracing the weakness is the strength, but also changing? And I guess the second part to is there good change and bad change, right? When is change good? Who is and who do we need to change for? I know there's a lot there, but let's go back to this idea of being set in your ways, aka stubborn. This is who I am.
Yeah. No, I don't think those are incompatible. So let's take an example. Well, that's why I call my new assessment Amplify, because I don't want you to not change. The goal is become more of who you are, not to have the goal of becoming something else. One of the problems with things like, for example, Carol Dweck's growth mindset is you're not supposed to say, well, I'm not a physicist or I'm not good at physics. You're supposed to say, I'm not good at physics yet. Well, when are you going to become better at physics? And if you're going to become better at physics, that means you won't have time to become better at about 8 million other things that you could be good at. There are limits to our time, energy, effort, resources. And so at some point, yes, we do want to change. We do want to improve. We do want to grow within the context of who I am. So for example, I got in trouble because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. Now I get paid to stand up and talk and run my own business. One of the reasons that I spent time doing stand-up comedy is because I was already naturally funny and I wanted to build on that. And I knew it was one of the reasons that people came to hear me speak. And I wanted to build on that strength. So this isn't a don't change. This is build on your strengths. This isn't don't change. This is build change on top of who you are. If you're a gifted writer, don't say, well, but I'm bad at speaking and I bet my life would be better if I was a better speaker. Ask yourself, how do I write more? How do I communicate even better in writing? How do I build on that strength? How do I tap into that instead of why don't I go over here and do this other thing that I seem completely unprepared and unqualified for? So how do I build on that foundation that I already have? And is there a reason that I'm not expanding in those ways? And it's probably because people are criticizing the downside. So for example, in the Amplify assessment, one of the strength weakness combinations is creative and messy, creative and disorganized. And there's 2 books behind me, Messy, The Power of Disorder to Transform Our Lives, and A Perfect Mess, the hidden benefits of disorder. And both books are about the upside of being messy. And one of the huge upsides is creativity. But what do we tell creative people who are disorganized? We tell them they need to be more organized. So I'm not telling a creative person to not grow and not change. What I'm telling them is get more creative by pushing against the cult of organization. Be even more messy, be even more ridiculous, make a mess, break things, destroy things, throw things against the wall, turn things upside down, turn things inside out. Feel that freedom to go deeper into your comfort zone than you already were, instead of, well, I don't like to organize, but I probably should. And the same in reverse. There's nothing wrong with organization if that's you. So the opposite is a systematic organizer. And what I tell those people is find stuff to organize, become a professional organizer, get paid to organize other people's lives for them. Don't fall into the trap of you're not creative enough. You need to loosen up. You need to stop being so stuffy. You need to let go of this idea that everything has to be in its place. And you need to, no, they don't. Go farther. Be more of who you are instead of fighting against that. But that's where that comfort zone thing comes for, or the no pain, no gain, and all these ridiculous things that we teach people. So yes, change who you are, grow. So for example, I'm athletic. I like to move. I like to be outside. So then I push myself to do things that are more and more difficult and more challenging, but are within the realm of who I am and what I want to do. I don't want to go to a 2-week silent retreat. That's an option. That's not for me. That's not anything that I'm about, is not about silence and meditation. That's not part of my life. The way I recharge, the way I meditate is in motion, outside, in nature, on the move, accomplishing things using my body. So I push myself by doing a 100-mile race. I don't push myself by doing a 2-week silent retreat. Both would require pushing. One is part of who I am that I want to expand. The other one is not something that is attractive to me and not a part of me that I'm trying to develop because it isn't relevant for the way I see my life and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Okay, so well, one more point on this, and then we'll talk about Amplify, which is, I've been calling it the Augustus Gloop effect, where your eyes are bigger than your stomach. You know, he just had to get himself some more of that beautiful chocolate river, fell in it, got sucked up the pipe, and he was out of the running.
Right.
So what is it about us that our eyes are bigger than our stomach or our appetite, that we or we're just not, you know, because we're trying to break out our comfort zone to find out where the magic happens. We're not happy with our lot. We're dissatisfied with our imperfections. We're constantly looking for the grass that is greener on the other side. What is it about us that where we constantly fall into this trap?
Well, first of all, I think some people don't, and then we get upset with them that they don't want to grow and they don't want to develop. And then the people who do want to grow and develop, it's because you're constantly hearing those messages, right? If you go anywhere and you listen to anything, people are going to tell you about stuff about you that you should be dissatisfied with. I mean, there used to be a TV show called What Not to Wear, and you basically, your friends would sell you out and send pictures of you to people on television, and they would come accost you and tell you that your wardrobe was terrible and you needed to fix it. So I think when you're looking to grow and you're looking to improve, we love to pathologize everything. And even the example you just gave, people worry when I tell you to go farther and be more. Oh, you know, well, everything in moderation. Don't go too far. Don't be obsessed. You know, I have a book behind me for all those things. There's a book called America's Obsessives about the power of obsession. There's a book called Productive Narcissists about all sorts of people who were narcissistic and changed the world. There's a book called The Wisdom of Psychopaths. Some psychopaths end up in prison and in mental hospitals, and some end up running the world and running organizations. Being a psychopath is not a bad thing. You can use it for bad things, or you can use it for good things. But the thing itself, not having deep emotional connections to other people, being very distant from others emotionally and psychologically, doesn't have to be used maliciously, doesn't have to be used negatively. But psychopath has become a synonym for murderer, kidnapper, violent criminal, when in fact it's just a different personality that some people have. And it actually relatively rare, which also then makes it a little more interesting for us. So I think some people are more tempted to go farther. Again, I think the question is just, what are we going farther with? One of the examples that I used in my first book, and I still follow this guy, he's really interesting. His name is Todd Crandall, and he was a drug addict. And he turned his life around by going from being addicted to drugs to being addicted to Ironman triathlons. He started a great organization called Racing for Recovery. And when ESPN SportsCenter talked about him, they said it very perfectly. They said he used to abuse his body with drugs, and now he abuses his body with Ironman triathlons, right? So the issue is not, are you going too far? Todd Crandall is always going to go too far. In fact, I think his first nonprofit went bankrupt because he was so busy trying to help people, he wasn't paying attention to, do we have enough money to help all these people? Todd Crandall's always going to go too far. And by the way, that was something like 15 years ago, and Todd Crandall is still doing Ironmans every other weekend. He's still running his organization, Racing for Recovery. He's still changing people's lives. And I've seen this over and over and over again. Many, an incredibly high percentage, and people are starting to do research on this, of the people in the ultra endurance world, the ultra endurance athletes, are people who are using running and athletics to fill the void that would otherwise be filled with alcohol or drugs. They have to do too much. They have to go too far, so they can either do that productively or do that destructively. And ultra endurance racing gives them an outlet to where they can fuel their lives, fuel their souls, fuel their bodies, and accomplish great things while being addictive, while being obsessive, in a way that doesn't destroy their lives the way drugs and alcohol did.
Well, Dave, you've always been my favorite psychopath, and now oh wait, we've got a laugh track now as well, and now I know why. I'm
the opposite. I'm too sensitive, and there's a great book by Jen Granneman called Sensitive, and I'm on that side of the spectrum. Yeah.
I need a favor. I need you to take all those books behind you and send me a copy, because I'm going to try and get each one of those authors on my show. I mean it.
All right. Perfect.
We'll call it the David Rendall series. Yeah. You actually reconciled my entire question in your last response, because this is who I am. This idea of take me for who I am. That is the weakness. That is the addiction, right? In the example you gave. But when you change the circumstance and change the context from an unhealthy addiction to a healthy addiction, you end up with a completely different outcome. And I think you helped me just kind of make that connection, which is if you understand who you are and why you are, and instead of, as you once said, instead of turning the weakness into the strength, what if the weakness is the strength
already? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was one of the lucky few to test your new personality assessment, Amplify, and of course, I'm not a stand-up comedian, but of course, my result was that I have no personality. So, surprise, surprise. But here are my results. So you haven't seen them before. You wanted to know what the top 5 were. Well, first of all, a little intermission. Here's your wolf moon, by the way, on.
Oh, right. Okay.
And you'll see, like pros, fits my girthy frame, has wolves in it, attracts women. Cons, only 3 wolves, could probably use a few more on the guns. Cannot see wolves when sitting with arms crossed. Wolves would have been better if they glowed in the dark. And I mean, it was just it's a wonderful case study. I bought the shirt, and unfortunately, it doesn't fit my girthly body anymore. It's more like I don't know, like a 3 wolves head. And a crescent of a moon. Anyway, here were my results, and what I'm going to do is, in fact, I will. I kind of zoomed in a little bit. So these were my top 5, if you can see it.
Yep.
So tell me what you're seeing, and tell me if there's any hope for me.
Yeah, you got Chaotic Creator. We already mentioned that one. And then Relentless Persister. That's one of the things we have to fix, is your high scores on the opposite side, but it highlighted it on the left. That's something we're working on. Passionate Enthusiast. Hopeful Idealist. Ooh, that's a good one as well. You have a lot of higher scores. So there's a couple of things. So one of the things we do is we send you reports for those individual ones, right? Chaotic Creator. And one of the things it does is it tells you about the upside and the downside. And then it encourages you to turn up the volume on that. We talked about that with Chaotic Creator. Break stuff, destroy stuff, make stuff messier, set something aside. Rage Rooms, a great example of a place embracing that. So they teach you to amplify, but then they also talk about finding the right fit. And that's something that you've done. And it's clear in this thing. Like you said, you don't even have the opposite of chaotic creator, a systematic organizer. You said you don't even have, like, you just had my name on a piece of paper, and that was your plan for tonight, right? And that's that's the opposite of having it hyper organized and having every minute laid out and sending me a detailed agenda and all of these things. And I'm comfortable with that as well. And so what the assessment does is not just encourage you to turn up the volume, amplify, but find situations that reward you for who you are. So most of your strengths were in that P, passionate quadrant. So persuasive, creative, flexible, enthusiastic, adventurous, entertaining, idealistic, bold, spontaneous. All of that sounds great. The reason people don't tap into that as well as they could, and the reason brands don't tap into that as well as they could, is because the downside is disorganized, inconsistent, volatile, reckless, immature, unrealistic, loud, impulsive, distractible, carefree, or careless. All of those are also true. You don't get this without that. You can't be tall and short at the same time. And so what we encourage people to do with Amplify is turn up the volume on those. And so when you get this report, you get your top 5 scores, and then we send you a 2-page PDF for each of those top 5 with advice on how to accept it, how to appreciate it, how to amplify it, how to find the right fit, alignment, how to avoid, and this is the tough one, almost anybody's down for, yeah, I should do more of my strengths. The tough one is avoidance. Stay away from situations that put the spotlight on your weakness. So if you're chaotic and you're not organized, stay away from jobs, activities, clients that require a high level of organization. That's where people struggle. They go, oh, no. If I can't do that, I should fix that. And we address that. The last part of every report is affiliation. Partner with people who are strong where you're weak. So I know, for example, on my podcast, I work with somebody who has 25 years of experience in video and audio. They helped me set up the studio. They manage all the behind the scenes stuff. My only job is to put on my headphones, plug everything in, record my podcast. I don't even think I push a button. Record the podcast. It automatically uploads somewhere, and then Dan takes it the rest of the way. So I'm partnering with somebody who's strong where I'm weak. They picked the platform. They put stuff out on social media. They do all the editing. So the reason we don't need to fix our weaknesses is because we don't need to be good at everything. And the reason we don't need to be good at everything is because there's other people in the world who are strong where we're weak, and we're strong where they're weak. And when we partner with them, that's the beauty of relationships in families, in organizations, in friendships. And so we don't have to be good at all those things. And even if we're going to, when a really disorganized person even attempts organization, they're never going to do it at the same level as that person who's ready to be a professional organizer. And by the way, I want to mention that real fast, because you said, why do we end up, going too far? It's because we get this pressure, and we get this pressure from, like the life-changing magic of tidying up. Marie Kondo. She wrote this book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And she told everybody to get rid of anything that doesn't bring you joy. And she painted this picture of this hyper-organized life that's unrealistic for most people. And yet, because she was doing it, people felt like they should. And I think that's part of what pushes people into the chocolate river that you were mentioning earlier, is this idea, I should be everything. I should be all the things. I should be able to have all the strengths. I should be able to have none of the weaknesses. And so the great ending to that story was she recently came out and recanted the entire book, the entire philosophy of the life-changing magic of tidying up, because when she wrote that book originally, she didn't have children, or she didn't have very many children. And once she had her third child, she realized it was completely unrealistic to have this incredibly organized, structured, perfect, clutter-free life, because you want to have relationships with people, and that requires time, effort, and energy. And so we get that pressure from someone. They paint this picture in a book or on Instagram or social media of this perfect thing that we feel like we should have, or we should be able to live up to. And then when you find out the truth, I don't think it's really ever what they painted or what you thought it was. And so that's part of what I'm trying to expose with the imperfectionists. And you're seeing that more and more, you know, the Instagram versus reality posts and stuff like that. People are going to try to tell you that their body looks like this. Here's what they look like in a different photo. People are going to tell you that this tourist destination looks like this. Here's the other side of the story, or here's just the unedited version of that photo. I'm trying to help people see that too and stop moving towards an unrealistic picture of their life that, like you said, does cause people to say, I have to change who I am. I have to throw away who I am because there's something better out there and I don't have it yet. And they throw away who they are in the process, missing the beauty that they already have.
Please look out for Dave's new book, The Chocolate River. That's going to be.
I do love chocolate.
That's after where the magic happens. All right.
Well, that's where the magic happens, is in.
Oh yeah, in the chocolate river.
Yeah.
That's true. You know, just proceed at your peril and get sucked up the pipe.
That was one that there was shame this morning. I saw this thing. This guy said, if your coffee order is more than 200 calories, I have a harsh truth for you. You don't like coffee, you like milkshakes. And so my response was, I do like milkshakes and coffee's terrible. And that's what you get over and over on the internet, is somehow that if you don't want your coffee black and if you would like cream and sugar in your coffee, there's something wrong with you. Instead of just, hey, some people have a sweet tooth and other people don't, and that's fine. And let's move along.
I want to make sure that you talk also just specifically and tell people why to subscribe to or to subscribe. The why is obvious because it's you. I wanted to ask you one more question that was on my, well, two things. One is, it seems like even I do, you know, I do love milkshakes. I hate coffee, which is like, well done. But it seems like one of the techniques to handle this is to be a little is it self-effusive? No, self-effacive or self-deprecating, I should say. You know, the ability to like not take yourself that seriously and have a little bit of fun. It seems like there's a place for that in this whole philosophy and methodology of embracing those imperfections and just saying, you know, yep, you know, I'm you know, I'm ugly, just like Winston Churchill. Accused Bessie of being, right. I'd be like, suddenly I was thinking, no, I'm drunk, and she was ugly. But there I was, completely imperfect, you know. But self-deprecation seems like a good approach.
Well, that goes back to acceptance again. Being able to say both. We get in trouble for being too confident. Then you're bragging, you're being boastful. So then people say stupid things when they get awards, like, I'm so humbled by this award. That's not what humbled means. You're humbled by something difficult that happens to you that made you look or seem worse than people thought you were previously. You're proud. You're proud because you did a good job. You're proud because you accomplished this. You're proud because you achieved something that you've been working for a long time. But we're so afraid to say that because we're afraid to look like we're boasting and arrogant or conceited, which is a real negative thing. But we love people who are confident. And so I think the balance is, and I hate in general the idea of balance with this kind of stuff, but the balance is, I'm incredibly confident about the strengths that I have, and I'm willing to acknowledge the weaknesses that I have at the same time. And I'm willing to be very, very proud of and very, very confident in expressing these strengths that I have. And I'm very, very, to your point, open, vulnerable, and unashamed, unapologetic about these things that aren't good about me. And that's called self-awareness. Instead of trying to pretend that there's nothing special about me or trying to pretend that I'm perfect, it's simply acknowledging that both of those things exist at the same time. And there's nothing wrong with having both of those things going on at any given time. Everybody does. We just trade some imperfections for others. There's no perfect person out there. So I think you're right. Being very comfortable just going, yeah, I'm no good at that. Not, I'm no good at that yet. I'm just not good at that. I'm also not trying. I'm not on the path to being good at that. I let other people handle that, or I just don't live my life that way and just keep going. And there's nothing wrong with that.
All right, quantum superposition with David Rendall. It's I have a joke actually with people sometimes. I go, I'm funny, I'm talented, I'm incredibly good looking, I'm smart, I'm charismatic, I'm vivacious, and I'll do this, and then eventually they'll go, and humble. I'll go, no, I'm definitely not humble. That's my way of just kind of, and did I mention funny? Anyway, here's the thing. You've got a podcast called The Imperfectionist. I love the name. I love everything about it. I'm perfectionist, imperfectionist. Tell people about the podcast and what you have planned for it.
So what we do is we talk about the kind of stuff you and I have been talking about. We use company examples of imperfection, but also a lot of personal examples of imperfection. We talk about the connection between strengths and weaknesses. We talk about some of the personality development stuff. We talk about Amplify, and the way it's been, I'll talk about the reason people have subscribed to it. The way it's been helpful, the two most powerful responses I've gotten so far was from an adult man who recently was diagnosed with autism, well into his 40s, and sort of is grappling with, what does that mean that I have autism? And he said that finding the Imperfectionist podcast really helped him. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm broken and I'm damaged and I'm disabled and I'm dysfunctional and something's fundamentally wrong with me, he saw those two sides. The autism is a weakness, but it also comes with powerful strengths. And this is also who I am. And I can grapple with that differently than I would if I only saw the weaknesses without the strengths. And then there was a younger, probably in her 30s, female business owner who has ADHD. And it was very helpful for, again, accepting and appreciating the upside of ADHD when all we really normally hear about is the downside. And also with her marketing, she has her own business, and it encouraged her to tap into some of these unique ideas she has for marketing her business that she was afraid to do because they would seem unprofessional or ridiculous to a lot of the people around her. But again, it was part of her unique personality. It was part of who she was, and she wanted to try it, but she was afraid because all of the messages she was hearing from outside were, that's wrong, that's not going to work, that's stupid, and good business people don't do that. So it's encouraging, it's affirming of your uniqueness, and it also encourages you to turn up the volume on those things that oftentimes the outside world, society, but also sometimes well-meaning friends and family members are trying to push down. In The Imperfectionist, we talk about the value of opening those things up, amplifying those things, turning up the volume in a world that oftentimes tries to get us to moderate, reduce, and eliminate those unique aspects of our lives and our businesses.
To hire or work with Dave, visit www.drendall. I was thinking to myself, thank God you didn't go into the family euthanasia business.
Yeah. Somebody said that to me, and I didn't notice that for a long time. If you're old enough, and I think both of us are, the early email protocols were, to put your first initial of your first name and then your last name as, your email. And davidrendall.com was taken and never been used, though. It's been taken for years and years and years. It's always been owned, but never had a functioning, use to it. And I've tried to buy it, and I've tried to contact the people and whatever. So yeah, it was drendall.com. And unfortunately that happens to spend drendall.com. So I haven't gotten a lot of requests for euthanasia, and I do not fulfill those requests.
Dr. Endall mediocrity, Dr. Endall.
There we go.
There you go. Actually,
Endall conformity. Yeah.
There you go.
I love it.
It's like God, what's his name? He's Eric Qualman. Eric Qualman is Equal Man. Equalman. So he became Equal Man, and it became his whole brand with the equal sign, etc. Okay, we are way beyond time, but I just want, please go to Dr. Rendall.
We went over time.
Go to
We're
Dr.
chaotic. You're a chaotic creator.
Okay, well, now I have notes, but the problem with those notes that I've been writing down is I can't read any of my writing, and I'll forget to go back to it. So if you go to drendall.com, you can find out how to work with this genius of a man. He literally changed my life. And you can actually, we didn't even get to, why would we even get to these fun facts about you. If you want to hear the story about, for example, him being hit by a truck, this is the power of AI, where I just let the imperfections. What kind of that looks like the new Tesla truck, by the way. Or you want to find out about how he got stitches in a Ukrainian hospital, or even just that he visited. This is how you visited Pakistan without a visa. I realized that one was.
I almost couldn't get into the place that I was speaking at was like the Karachi Yacht Club, and it was still real that old-fashioned stuffy British club of you have to dress a certain way and all these things. And they ended up running around all day after I got into Pakistan without having a visa initially. I almost couldn't get into the speaking venue because they had a requirement that you had to wear dress shoes, and I wear pink sneakers. And I almost wasn't allowed to get in. So yeah, the pink jacket, I needed the pink dress shoes to get into the Karachi.
And you were like, but I'm the keynote speaker.
I know. And I did. They bought them, and just in case, and they didn't push it and make me change. But
they said
it was potentially
they said this is Hotel California. You can check in anytime you want, but you can never leave. All right, we are gonna leave, and I don't know if Chuck Norris was a part of the show in 2020 when you were on, but now he basically determines if my guest was a keeper or not. So surprise, surprise, this is what he had to say about you.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
I mean, that's pretty obvious. We are going to play out with 2 clips from Dave's appearance on the show 4 years ago. Please come back when the Chocolate River is published. Maybe it will be the Pink River, the Orange River. I don't know, something like that. But these are the 2.
Pink River.
The pink. What did I say? I said the Pink River.
You said orange. So I was just kidding.
I said pink first, but you don't want to fall in. You don't want to fall into the Pink River. You want to just.
I got a Chuck Norris one for you.
Yeah.
Because you had me getting hit by a truck, and then I got Chuck Norris approved. Chuck Norris once got hit by a truck, and that truck got totaled.
Yeah, and that also makes me think of do you know why lightning never strikes the same place twice?
No.
Because Chuck Norris is looking for it. There's so many. It actually comes back to to the greater. And actually, funnily enough, like everything comes back to imperfectionism. But the world's most interesting man. He says, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. I mean, how imperfect is that? Okay, yeah. So here are the 2 sound bites. We could talk for hours, but watch the 2, and then we'll play out. And please don't be a stranger. So here's clip. This is when they were called Corona bites. So here's the first one. Who says it's broken? Who defines what is broken?
Well, and I think you really hit something immediately there. Who decides? We tell people that if you want to be a leader or be successful, you need to be open to other people's feedback and input. I can't give you a blood test to find out if you're conceited or just really, really confident. I can't give you a blood test to find out if you're really, really organized or you've got some kind of problem. There's no scientific evaluation there. So it's up to my boss told me I'm too analytical. My boss told me I'm too intense. My wife told me that I'm too organized. Who decides? Who decides where that line is, and who decides when we should take that criticism on board and try to do something about it? Or we just say, hey, everyone's going to have a different perspective on just about any possible characteristic. And I could probably find other people who feel like maybe I don't even have enough of that characteristic. So that's one of the lies we've all been told. If you want it bad enough and you try hard enough, you can be whatever you want to be. And it's simply not true.
So complete that sentence for me. If that is not true, then what is true?
What's true is that success happens when you find the right fit between who you are and where you are, between the person and the place. When you find that alignment where, to your point from earlier, it's not that the weakness becomes a strength or that you turn the weakness into a strength. In the right situation, the weakness is the strength. When I'm in school and I want to move and I want to talk and I want to be in charge, all of those characteristics look like weaknesses because I'm in the wrong place. I'm in a place that wants sitting still, being quiet, doing what you're told. When I run my own business as a keynote speaker and I want to stand up and I want to talk and I want to be in charge, that's the job.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.